Whenever you are.
All right. All right. Thanks for hopping on to this special edition pop-up show on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. Dustin Reese, a.k.a. Stack Guy, joined by Jay McLovin. Jay, how have you been today, and have you finally recovered from your Monday night of pain?
Yeah. Obviously, that was a rough loss for us at Texas, but it probably would have been more painful had Texas not have a deep team going into next year, which gives me hope for next year. So it hurt, but I'm regrouping. I'm focusing for next year, and man, I'm doing good. I'm definitely looking forward to talking a little draft talk with you.
Yeah, and speaking of that, that is kind of what this show is today. It's more so a mock draft of what teams are going to do once the first round starts. Obviously, with one game left this season, things can obviously change depending on how certain teams do, but I think the top 5 at this point is pretty much done given unless there's trades made, and then 6 through 15 is kind of where the shuffles will go. So we'll just start with obviously the number 1 pick, which is the Carolina Panthers pick, but as part of their DJ Moore trade with the Bears last year, the Bears get Carolina's number 1 pick. So for the second straight year, the Bears take the number 1 overall selection. I think the Bears trade out of the number 1 spot this year just because there's so many teams that need a quarterback, and with this draft being as quarterback heavy as it is, it just makes sense for the Bears to trade out of it. My guess would be the Bears would trade with the Las Vegas Raiders and basically move down to number 11, given the Bears pick 10 and 11, and have Vegas move up to number 1. And with Vegas moving up to number 1, I would have the Vegas Raiders take Caleb Williams. Even though I'm not 100% as sold on him as a lot of people are, I think the Raiders need that franchise quarterback, especially with guys like Devontae Adams and Michael Mayer and some of those other pieces. And Caleb Williams has said it himself, the Raiders are one of those teams that he wants to play for. So in that situation, I just think it's a nice fit.
Yeah, I like that. I think we're both at least – I think me and you both at least can agree on that Chicago is not going to keep that number 1 spot, that we both agree that Chicago will trade out of the number 1 simply because there has been no rumor mill talk. There's been no conversational talk. There's been nothing that's going to suggest that the Chicago Bears are going to move on from Justin Fields. And because of that, there's no reason to keep that number 1 spot when you can grab more draft picks, which obviously can address more of the needs that they have, either on the offensive line or the defensive line, or even as a possible other wide receiver threat, if they deem so, because I think that second round is going to have plenty of that to offer. So for that means, I think there's 1 or 2 teams that will do it. Now, I know you gave your teams. I think my 2 teams, number 1 we talked about was the Giants. I think Dable knows that Daniel Jones isn't the guy. Neither is DeVito or Tyrod Taylor. And he really does need to put his stamp on this team. And the way he's going to do that is drafting his quarterback in the future, whether that be Caleb Williams or whether that mean more like a Michael Penix, which I don't think Michael Penix goes 1 because of the injuries. So I don't think he's going to look at a Michael Penix. I think Caleb Williams, maybe a Drake May, Mike McCarthy. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that you could look at. And obviously, I think is Jaden Daniels. Is he declared for the draft, didn't he?
Yep, he did.
Yeah, so you got the Heisman Trophy winner and Jaden Daniels also available. Depending on who whoever Dable feels more comfortable with. Either way, I think the Giants are 1 team that could trade up, and I'm going to go Caleb Williams on both of these teams because I like Caleb Williams' talent, and I think with the right offensive coordinator, right system, I think Caleb Williams could do good things. So that being said, I think Giants are number 1. My number 2 team that could trade up and possibly try to get them would be the New England Patriots because they are letting go of Bill Belichick, which means they're going to get a new head coach in. And we all know that Zappy's not the guy that's going to carry that team. We damn sure know Mac Jones ain't going to carry that team. So that guy is going to want to put his stamp on this team. And what better way to do it than to trade up to the first overall pick and get the guy you really want to lead your new regime. So I think Caleb Williams ultimately is the guy that goes number one, and it's just a matter of whether or not Dable wants to put his stamp on it, or if the new coach of the Patriots wants to put his stamp on it. But either way, I think one of those teams will jump up and grab Caleb Williams at 1.
And then picking number 2 is the Washington Commanders, who at one point were a 3-4, 3-5 football team, and were actually looking like a team that could possibly compete for the final wild card spot. Now here they are with the longest losing streak in the NFL right now at 7 consecutive games. They've already fired Jack Del Rio. I think it's a pretty much foregone conclusion that Ron Rivera is going to be gone after this season. And now it becomes a situation of, do you let Eric Bieniemy take over as head coach, or do you bring in somebody different? We've seen a lot from Sam Howell this year. Yes, he's got the 19 interceptions, but he does lead the NFL in average passing yards per game. So I don't think Washington goes quarterback at number 2 just because this was Sam Howell's first year as a starter, and he's kind of showed a lot of growth, especially under Bieniemy. But I do think they're going to add to that repertoire because right now they have Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin as their wide receivers, but outside of that, they don't really have anybody else. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the ideal fit here, but I'm actually going to go with Malik Neighbors at number 2, mainly because Malik Neighbors fits more that Eric Bieniemy style of an offense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Obviously, though, let's welcome Frankie the Yankee to the show. How you doing, brother?
Tired.
Hopefully this show will liven you up a little bit. Hey, so here's the thing. I think, like you said, Ron Rivera is out. They're going to get a new head coach, whether it be Bieniemy or whoever. This is just another opportunity again to put your stamp on what you want to lead this franchise. You got to understand at this point, I really believe that Washington is a dumpster fire, right? They got rid of Chase Young. They got rid of Montez Sweat. I don't know if McLaurin is going to want to stick around for another coach, another possible rebuild when he is. So I think maybe you could lose McLaurin at some point down the road. So I think this is really a rebuild team in Washington, and that new coach is going to want to put his stamp on it. Now, yes, you could. So if he's not going, if this guy is not 100% convinced that Howell is the guy that he wants to roll with, I think Washington possibly could be another team that wants to put their stamp on it and go quarterback on that as well. And I think Drake May would be a good spot. I think Drake May would do wonderful things out there underneath a guy like Bieniemy or whoever, takes over that spot. Or even if Bieniemy stays on as coordinator, which I don't expect him to do. So if he gets the head coach role, maybe Drake May is somebody he wants to roll with. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, Penix, all these guys are in there. It's going to be a quarterback if they don't 100% believe in Howell. If they do think that Howell is the right guy, then I think you're looking for somebody to compete on the opposite side of McLaurin to give that offense a little bit more push and give Sam Howell a little bit more weaponry, because we know that they really don't have anybody outside of McLaurin. They really don't even have a true running back. But I think at that point, I think you go Marvin Harrison. Or if you don't want Marvin Harrison, then you get that wideout that plays for Washington. Dustin, you know his name. I can't pronounce it, but it's a street. There you go. I think you're either going Harrison or that guy. And for that reason, I'm gonna stick with that. They stay with Howell, because I haven't heard anything with that Howell as being on the market. So I'm going to go with them staying with Howell. And I think that possibly Marvin Harrison or the guy from Washington will take that spot and compete with McLaurin on that team.
Who you got, Frankie?
Is this the number 2 pick?
Yeah.
Well, number 1, I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to keep the number 1 pick. I do think that I have 2 teams that can possibly trade up for the number 1 pick with the Chicago Bears. One is going to be Washington. I know it's not going to be a big, wow, they did a trade, because Washington's number 2. Washington can be one that's going to, trade on up to get the best quarterback in the draft. Just because, like Jay said, and I didn't get to hear what you said, Dustin, but
I said the Raiders would trade with the Bears because of the Devontae Adams wanting a quarterback, and then in exchange, the Bears would get Max Crosby as part of that deal.
Right.
I had the Patriots. I got the Patriots or the Giants, depending on who wants to put their stamp on it at the number 1 spot. But we all had the Bears trading out of the number 1.
Yeah, and you know what, and I can see the Raiders trading up at the number one pick, but then again, I don't think they're gonna have the Raiders are not gonna want to give up Crosby, man. I mean, I feel like that man has just turned up on the defensive side of the ball. I understand you have to give up a big player in order to get the number one pick, but I don't think the Raiders are just yet gonna give up Crosby just to get the number one. I feel like they could give up someone less value to at least get into the top 10. And they could get a quarterback within the top 5, top 6, in the first round. But I think Washington could probably move up from 2 to 1, or even my second team is what Jay said, the Giants. I could see the Giants jumping up from number 5, or number 4, wherever they're at. To jump up to number 1, because realistically they need a quarterback really bad as well. You can't count on Daniel Jones anymore. You can't count on Tommy DeVito. You definitely can't count on Tyrod Taylor, because that man can't stay healthy for God knows what reason. Why he's still in the NFL? I think it's time for him to go to the new league of the UFL. Um, but I think the Giants can jump up to number 1, and then whichever team jump up to number 1 is going to get Caleb Williams. Leaving to the number 2 pick, which falls on the Patriots right now. Oh no, it falls on Washington. I'm sorry, Washington with the number 2 pick. If they stay at number 2, I do see Washington getting a quarterback on number 2. Caleb Williams goes number 1, meaning that at number 2, I'm gonna put Drake Maine at number 2, going to Washington. I am not fully confident in Sam Howell over there in Washington. I'm not confident in their backup. Eric Bieniemy needs a fresh arm, someone that he can coach freshly as a rookie, not someone he has to be like, listen, you have to fix this, and you have to fix that, you have to do that. No, you give Eric Bieniemy someone that he can be fresh with and start real fresh. The Ron Rivera deal, I mean, it's a done deal. The man's going to be gone. So I feel like Eric Bieniemy should get the head coaching role come next season, and then he can go ahead and pick up Drake Maine at number 2.
All right, Frankie, this is on you. Picking number 3, which can't remember the last time anyone ever thought the Patriots would pick in the top 10, let alone the top 5 with a Bill Belichick-led team. But the team's been struggling the last couple of years, and I think this year was kind of that full circle where everyone realizes that Mac Jones is not the answer, and if the Patriots had a do-over 3 years ago, they would have did something to get a do-over. But your Patriots are on the clock at number 3. What do they do?
So Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft next week are going to have a one-on-one meeting to discuss Bill Belichick's future. Most likely, we're going to get news that they're going to part ways, quote unquote. But we really know that Robert Kraft is done with Bill Belichick, and they say part ways, but realistically, he's going to end up getting fired. They just want to make it seem nice that both parties left in good terms. But I think it's the Bill Belichick era in the New England Patriots is over. We're going to get someone to take over the helm, someone fresh, someone new, hopefully someone good and someone smart. At number 3, I honestly, realistically think that we should get a quarterback at number 3, and I'm thinking Jaden Daniels, Heisman Trophy out of LSU. I feel like we should go that route. But then again, with the last 4 games that I've seen Bailey Zappi, man, he's been on a good roll. I mean, yes, he's not winning. Like, he's 2-3 right now in the last 5 games, but the man has been putting up numbers. He's been putting up nice yardage. He's been putting up touchdowns, less turnovers than Mac Jones has throughout the entire season. Mind you, Mac Jones literally has double-digit interception numbers, and Bailey Zappi is only, I think, at like 3 or 4 within the last 5 games, compared to like 7 touchdowns that Bailey Zappi has already. So, I mean, I like what Bailey Zappi is doing at the helm, and I feel like if you could start Bailey Zappi in the beginning of the year, he could give you something. So I say stick with Bailey Zappi for now and go out and get Marvin Harrison Jr. Get a wide receiver, because we desperately need wide receivers. You need to get somebody at that wide receiver position to help out. You got the running backs from Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott if you want to go ahead and sign him again next year, because he's on a 1-year deal. Try and get away from what's this guy's name, Devontae Parker, because that dude is obviously not doing anything. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's under contract for 2 more years. Can he stay healthy? Who knows? Kendrick Bourne he's going to come back from injury. So I feel like if you get Marvin Harrison Jr. with Bailey Zappi, I feel a little bit confident more with Bailey Zappi because the man has an arm. Dustin, you've even said it yourself. They should have started Bailey Zappi since the beginning of the season.
I said they never should have went back to him after they started him last year.
Yeah, I mean, like Bailey Zappi's been showing the New England Patriots fans that he deserves to be there and he deserves to be the number one quarterback. And if you give him some type of talent in the wide receiver position, I feel like he'll be great. Plus with Demario Douglas too, him and Demario Douglas at the wide receiver position will be perfect for Bailey Zappi. Two young, fast wide receivers that can catch the ball really well. So I say give me Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 3 to the New England Patriots.
I'm kind of in like the same boat of you in two ways. If they bring Belichick back, I can see them sticking with Bailey Zappi and taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 3. If Robert Kraft decides to move on from Belichick and go after somebody else, I don't see Bailey Zappi being the starter next year because whatever coach comes in is going to want to have his guy to kind of mold the system around him. So with that being said, I'm just going to throw out 2 names because it's obviously depending on the situation. If Belichick stays, Patriots are going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. to give Bailey Zappi that true number 1 option that he doesn't have right now to pair him with guys like Smith-Schuster and the rest of the Patriots wide receiver core. But if they move on from Belichick and bring in a new head coach, I think the Patriots go Jaden Daniels at 3.
Yeah, this is where I kind of come in. I already have New England trading out of number 3 to number 1 and taking Caleb Williams. So with that said, I got the Bears right now at number 3. And so with that, I actually got them taking Marvin Harrison Jr. At number 3 as well. Only because of the fact that if they're going to trade out of number 1 and not take a quarterback, that means they're going to rock with Fields, which means they need to put somebody opposite of DJ Moore, a la Marvin Harrison Jr.
And then picking at number 4 is the Arizona Cardinals, who kind of find themselves in an interesting position also, mainly because a lot of people did not expect Kyler Murray to be back after this season, but he ended up signing that extension, so now he is going to be their long-term option, so that kind of takes them out of the running for a quarterback, and I thought they would be one of those teams that would need a quarterback. They need really 2 things at this point. They need an offensive line, and obviously they need more weapons to help Kyler Murray just because he doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins anymore. He doesn't have A.J. Green. Marquise Hollywood Brown has been a complete bust in his last 10 games with the Cardinals. Because of that, I do think they go wide receiver at number 4, and this kind of goes back to the whole Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison debate, depending on who the Patriots get at number 3. But I think Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to number 4, and I think that's who goes to the Cardinals.
Yeah, I got the Giants and Arizona swapping spaces, and now I got Giants at number 4. I got them trying to go after Jaden Daniels. I fully expect them to go after a quarterback that can throw the ball, that can buy time with his legs, that can read routes, and so for that reason, I do got Jaden Daniels number 4 going to the Giants, and Dable gets his man.
All right, what do you got, Frankie?
Did Frankie take a nap?
I think Frankie stepped away. We'll let him back in when he gets back in.
No,
we'll bring him back.
Okay.
My bad.
Oh, there's Frankie.
I was talking the whole time. My bad.
Who do you got at number 4 to Arizona, Frankie?
Yeah, I think Arizona stays at number 4. I don't think they make a trade of anyone. Like Dustin said, Kyler Murray is going to stay at Arizona. I feel like that he's going to stay under the Cardinals again, and start the year off as what they should have done this year. Him not on the injury list, and due to that injury, I think that we're going to get our first offensive tackle off the board. I think they're going to get that guy out of Penn State. I can't say his first name because it's really weird, but his last name is Fasanu.
Fasano?
I don't know. Fasano, there you go. Yes, from Penn State.
Alumiye Fasano?
Yes, 6'6", 317 pounds out of Penn State. They do need Kyler Murray to, be protected. And I feel like the best way to do that is going offensive tackle. Listen, guys, you guys can, be opposite with me and stuff. Yes, I understand that Arizona needs a wide receiver. There's a lot of wide receivers in this draft this year.
Well, and you got to look
There's
at the free agent market too. Like T. Higgins is going to be
exactly.
available. KJ
You got
Osborne's
T.
going to be
Higgins,
available.
TJ Hosmer. You got Mike Evans. So like, there's going to be so many opportunities that Arizona can get for wide receivers for Kyler Murray. What they need to do is get protection for Kyler Murray because the man can't stay healthy on the field. And the reason for that is because he's keep getting blitzed and he keep having to run out of the pocket. And the reason for that is because he doesn't have a good offensive line. And the best way to do it is right now going into the draft and getting the best offensive tackle. And to me, that's the kid out of Penn State.
Yes, and then at number 5 is the New York Giants, who.
Oh, and I didn't get my number 4. Oh no. Yeah, you said number 5. I apologize. Continue, Mission.
Yeah, number 5 is the New York Giants, who were kind of the surprise team in the NFL last year. They came out of nowhere, made the playoffs last year, beat the Vikings in the wild card round before losing to Philly. And a lot of people credited Brian Daboll with that just because of the amount of strides that Daniel Jones took last year. He played so well last year that the Giants thought it'd be a great idea to give Daniel Jones a 4-year extension as opposed to extending their best player, Saquon Barkley. And now Daniel Jones is out with a torn ACL. The Giants are a dumpster fire, and now they may lose Saquon Barkley next year just because the Giants messed up and gave that extension to Daniel Jones as opposed to Barkley. This is going to be their chance to get a do-over. This is going to be Daboll's first and probably only opportunity to draft the quarterback that he wants to draft in order to kind of best fit his system. I think it's Drake May. North Carolina quarterbacks, I'm not going to compare Drake May to Mitch Trubisky at all because they're two different styles. But when you look at Drake May's 2022 season and compare it to his 2023 season, Drake May had a down season this year compared to what he did last year. And that does concern me a little bit because he had arguably more offensive talent in that North Carolina offense this year than what he did last year, and yet he had a down year. But given his potential and given what he has done as 2 years as a starter at North Carolina, it's going to make it very hard to pass him up at number 5. So I'm going to go Drake May to the Giants at 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with number 5. This is where I had the Cardinals after the trade with the Giants, swapping spots. I still think they need look. You're right. There's a lot of wide receivers in this class. There's no doubt about it. But there's only maybe 2 wide receivers that are game-changing type wide receivers. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of them, and obviously Rome Odunze is the other one. And this is where I think Cardinals, with that game-breaking speed of Odunze, can come into play to help Kyler. Not that Kyler doesn't need. Look, the Cardinals need a lot of things. I mean, yes, they need offensive line, no doubt about it. But they need a lot of things, and I think Odunze would definitely be. He's at the top of his position, other than Harrison Jr. So I think where Odunze fits in nicely with the Arizona Cardinals.
Frankie, I don't know if you're talking.
Yeah. I got the Bears actually dropping back to number 5, trading with the Giants. Normally, before I said they can either trade with Washington, my realistic thing is they're probably going to trade with the Giants and drop down to number 5. And if it's going to be crazy, but if they make a trade with the Giants to get in the number 5, I expect that the Bears get Saquon Barkley out of that trade. Saquon is a person that's for a long time now he wants to get out of New York. I feel like he doesn't want to play with the Big Blue anymore. For just so many reasons, and the best way for him to do it is getting that trade package with the Bears and going number 5. I think that the Bears are going to go out and get another wide receiver, with Marvin Harrison Jr. possibly being off the board and going to the Patriots. In my theory, the best available wide receiver next would be Malik Nabers. I feel like he's going to go to the Bears at number 5, wide receiver out of LSU. And I feel like that's, you got to give Justin Fields help. I don't think that the Bears are going to go quarterback. We've seen it already that, the fans want Justin Fields to stay, and I feel like Chicago is going to keep Justin Fields there, not just for the fans, but because they believe in Justin Fields. I know, Jay, I saw your show earlier with Philly Sports Guy. I heard what you said about, Justin Fields and stuff, and I know you don't feel confident in him. A lot of people don't feel confident in him. But I feel like if you give him more help, maybe the man will start learning to stop running more and start throwing more. So I feel like they'll go wide receiver at number 5 with Malik.
And then we move to number 6 now, where you have the Los Angeles Chargers, who, now that they fired Brandon Staley, I think it's their chance to kind of wipe the slate clean because he's proven that he was not worthy of being a head coach. Because you look at the talent that this Chargers offense have. You have Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Even though Mike Williams tore his ACL early in the season, the Chargers still have so much offensive talent that there is no excuse for them to be sitting in the position they're sitting in right now. And a lot of that, obviously, you can blame the injuries on some of it this year because Herbert's been out, Allen missed some time, Eckler missed some time, and virtually every major contributor on the offense missed time. But Brandon Staley just has no idea how to run a football team because he decides to never punt the football or never kick a field goal and single-handedly ended a lot of games that the Chargers should have won. This team is obviously going to stick with Justin Herbert because he's one of the better quarterbacks in this league. But in order to make his career last longer, they need to get him a little bit more protection because their offensive line did break down at times late in this, or really all season, but really towards the end of the year, which is when Herbert got hurt. And because of that reason is where I'm going to go with the offensive tackle, Olaumye Fashanu from Penn State, because that's going to be the tackle that's going to protect Herbert's blind side, hopefully for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's nice. I actually have the Chargers trading back in the top 10 with the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is where the Atlanta Falcons really got to build that quarterback position up because let's be honest, the Falcons are only really truly I think a quarterback away from being a serious contender. They got the weapons at tight end, wide receiver, running back, pretty decent defense. I really think the field general is the one thing that's holding that team back, and that's where I think Michael Penix, who I think is the most pro-ready quarterback, fits in. He can fit right into that scheme. He'll get Pitts more involved. He'll get Drake London more involved, and ultimately it's going to get that team rolling. So I got Michael Penix to the Falcons at number 6.
And then at number 7, we have the Tennessee Titans, kind of another one of those disappointing teams this year, but obviously I think a lot of that had to hinder on Ryan Tannehill's injury, and then you had Will Levis, and just a lot of things didn't go the Titans' way. And they're kind of a team that is stuck in neutral because they have the core they want in place. Obviously, you have Treylon Burks as your top receiver. You have Nick Westbrook-Akine in there. You have Derrick Henry, so you have your offensive pieces. You have Will Levis, who, yes, he's made a lot of mistakes this year, but he's only a rookie. He's only started like 6 or 7 games, so you can't really say too much on that. But one thing the Titans have really struggled with this year is defensively, which is not something that you tend to hear from a Mike Vrabel coach team. And it's the secondary really that has been an issue for the Tennessee Titans. And because of that, I think Tennessee goes with Kool-Aid McKinstry at number 7, the junior defensive back out of Alabama.
Interesting. So we're looking at number 7. This is where I have Tennessee. Actually, I think they need an offensive tackle to help the run game and to help the wide receiver. So this is where I have Fashanu going. I have Fashanu going to Tennessee at number 7.
And this is kind of the more interesting pick here. Pick number 8 goes to the Jets. And for the New York Jets' sake, they are happy that Aaron Rodgers got hurt in this instance because they got to keep this number 8 pick. If Aaron Rodgers would have stayed healthy, and if he would have stayed healthy, if he would have came back when he said he was going to come back and played a certain amount of snaps, then this pick would have went to the Green Bay Packers, so the Jets would have lost his first-round pick. So the fact that we were able to keep it is kind of, I guess, the only positive that you can take from that. And obviously, they're going to have to invest in that offensive line because that offensive line was terrible in that first game and Rodgers got hurt, even though he only played 1 series. But if you want to ultimately get to where you think Aaron Rodgers can take you, you need to go offensive line at pick number 8, and that's exactly what I have the Jets doing. I have them taking offensive tackle Joe Alt from Notre Dame, the big 6'7", 322-pounder.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. This is the first time I think we've actually agreed on one. I have Joe Alt as well going over there because God knows, man, those quarterbacks, they need that. Or offensive line for the Jets has been decimated with injuries a lot of the times or just hasn't really been up to par. And when you got a guy, Aaron Rodgers is a little older in the tooth, you got to definitely protect his butt because he's not the kind of guy that's going to scramble for a lot of yards. So, yeah, Joe Alt, Notre Dame offensive tackle is definitely, I think it's going to be the best fit for the Jets at that spot.
Picking number 9 is the Atlanta Falcons, who are one of those teams that I would keep an eye on in terms of moving up in the draft. And I think it's mainly because they're sitting at 7 and 9, but at the same time, if they win this Sunday to get to 8 and 9, they can still win their division and make the playoffs. And all of a sudden they go from being a top 10 pick all the way down to about number 20. So this is one of those teams that you really have no idea where they're going to pick at this point up until the end of week 8 or week 18, just because you have to wait till those results come in. Atlanta, in my opinion, is the most talented team in the NFC South. When you look at the roster and you look at the playmakers they have, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, some of those guys on defense, like the talent is there, but what they're lacking is a quarterback because Desmond Ridder obviously hasn't panned out. They brought in Taylor Heineke this year, and Heineke, for the most part, has been a career backup, even though he has had some success back when he was with Washington and got Washington into the playoffs. But neither one of those guys is your answer at quarterback. You have guys like Michael Penix and Bo Nix that are going to be sitting here where it makes sense. But I think Atlanta is going to trade for Russell Wilson, honestly. Because I think Atlanta is going to want to go with more of a veteran quarterback as opposed to trying another young guy because the Desmond Ridder experiment didn't work. So I could see Atlanta going after Russell Wilson and then kind of addressing other needs on that roster. If they go Russell Wilson as their quarterback, I think they look to continue to improve on the defensive side of the ball where you're looking at a guy like Liatu Latu, which the edge rusher out of UCLA. He was once viewed as a second-round prospect, but due to the season that he had with UCLA this year, has kind of burst onto the top 10 kind of range, and even some people had him going into number 5. So I'm going to go with Liatu Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA at number 9.
Yeah. This is where at least me and you were both thinking the same thing with Atlanta and the fact that they need to put somebody there at that quarterback spot. You went free agent to get it there. I went Michael Penix, them drafting up to get it. And for that reason, that's where I got the Chargers right now at number 9 since Atlanta drafted up to get Penix. And I think they missed that Antonio Gates type of tight end. And so I went with the tight end at Brock Bowers over there taking that spot now with San Diego. So I got him drafting Brock Bowers at number 9.
And then rounding out the top 10 and virtually picking the way I have it with the trade that I made with the Raiders, the Bears will be picking 10th and 11th, which is good for them. But rounding out the top 10 is the Chicago Bears, who early on in the season, we thought they were actually going to be in a position to have the number 1 and number 2 pick. But then over the last 6 weeks, they've kind of turned into the team that I think a lot of people expected when you looked at the offseason that they had with the amount of money they spent, the DJ Moore trade and kind of the pieces they brought in. It just took a little while to get things going in the right direction. Well, Justin Fields has not proven to be a franchise quarterback quite yet, but he's taken the growth and the strides that you wanted him to take this year. And because of that, I don't see a scenario where the Bears are going to move on from Justin Fields. And I think now it becomes a case of what else can we do to give Justin Fields help? You have a young tight end in Cole Kmet, who's most likely going to be extended. You have a running game in Khalil Herbert, Rashawn Johnson, and some others that you can use. Obviously, DJ Moore is your number 1 wideout. But with Darnell Mooney on the decline the last couple of years and now heading to free agency, DJ Moore is going to need somebody to be on the other side of him. And that's why I have Roma Dunze going number 10 to the Bears.
Interesting. Yeah, obviously the way I've predicted this draft is pretty quarterback heavy, just with a lot of teams really needing a field general that don't have a field general in this top 10. And that's why I feel like this draft is going to be quarterback heavy in that top 10 with a couple of offensive tackles and a couple of wide receivers also thrown in. And for that reason, I think Denver panics a little bit. They just lost their star quarterback. I think Sean Payton's going to need a guy who he picks to take that spot. Bo Nix is clearly a tough-minded quarterback, just like Drew Brees was. And I think he takes a Drew Brees kind of guy. And I think Bo Nix fits that bill with Sean Payton real nice. And I think Bo Nix goes to the Denver Broncos at number 10. And Chicago is going to trade back one more time because the guys that they need, they can definitely pick up in the later picks. So, yeah, one more time, I think Chicago trades back.
And it's kind of funny because if we would have went a little bit further, I actually had Denver trading from 14 to 11 to take Bo Nix at 11. So I was kind of on the same train of thought you were with where Bo Nix was going to fall, but I thought quarterbacks are more highly looked at than Bo Nix. So I kind of see Bo Nix going in that 11 to 12 range, especially if the Raiders don't end up trading up. They're going to be sitting there. But the other guy that I want to talk about quick before we sign off is Michael Penix Jr. And the reason why I'm going to talk about it, and obviously you know my thoughts on him. I think I've gotten a lot more people on board with how he plays with the more that you guys have seen him play. But Mel Kiper Jr., who is the NFL draft expert, has Michael Penix listed as the number 6 quarterback in this draft. And I just sit there and I look at the numbers he put up this year, and I look at the numbers that he put up last year. Yes, there's injury concern, but obviously he hasn't been hurt since 2020. So it's not like the injury concerns are an issue anymore. It's the fact that he finally got put with a program that invested in an offensive line to protect him. And that was the biggest reason why he got hurt at Indiana, was because he never had the protection. The guy's played 14 games this season and has been sacked 10 times. And he's been sacked 22 times the last 2 years. His freshman season at Indiana, he got sacked 24 times in 6 games. So, I mean, the guy's getting protection, so now you can see what protection does.
Well, absolutely, that's what protection does. But I think that's the reason why maybe Kiper put him at number 6, not because of his talent. I think he put him at number 6 because of his age and the injuries and the fact that he needs a lot of protection. So a team that maybe doesn't have the best protection isn't going to necessarily want to draft him right up off the rip because they're going to have to store him back until they build up their offensive line. So that's why I think he kind of fades down a little bit in the draft. It's just because of his age and the injuries that he sustained.
And the thing with this is I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings as maybe the key to this whole situation, because they have a decision they got to make with Kirk Cousins. Do they bring him back, knowing that he may not be able to play until October because of the torn Achilles, knowing that he may never be the same quarterback he was before the torn Achilles because you don't know how a 36-year-old is going to recover from that? Or do you basically draft a quarterback, hand the keys over, and be like, this is your team now, you basically run it? And I think the Vikings have seen the second half of the season how valuable Kirk Cousins is to that franchise. But at the same time, they need to start valuing their future as well. As in, they need to get Cousins a reliable backup in case something happens where he does get hurt and then he can't come back. As much as I want to see Michael Penix go to Minnesota, I don't think Minnesota takes him at number 12 because they have too many other needs they need to address. One of the needs is obviously the secondary on the defensive side of the ball, which is where a guy like Cooper DeJean from Iowa would be a good pick at number 12. You have Kalen King from Penn State that can go at number 12, or even Nate Wiggins, the cornerback out of Clemson, that can go at number 12. But what I will say is I'm going to kind of compare this to the same situation of when Teddy Bridgewater was drafted to Minnesota, if you remember what happened. Minnesota was picking, I think, 13th or 14th in 2015, kind of in that same range they are right now. They took Anthony Barr at number 13 or number 14 in 2015, and then right before the end of the first round, they traded back into the first round to take Teddy Bridgewater at number 32. I see a similar situation happening this year where I think they go secondary at number 12 because they need a ton of secondary help. But then I see them trading back into the first round, probably around 20, maybe 21, or I see them trading back into the first round between 22 and 19 because 19 is Green Bay, 20 is Tampa Bay, 21 is Indy, and 22 is Jacksonville. And outside of Tampa Bay, those other three teams have their long-term options at quarterback with Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, and Trevor Lawrence. So I see the Vikings taking Cooper DeJean at number 12 and then trading back into the first round around number 20 and then taking Penix at 20.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of scenarios I think they could evolve. I actually think maybe Russell Wilson my thought process, he might wind up over there in Minnesota. I thought he would be a good spot.
That's what I thought too, but the actual mock draft that I'm looking at right now actually has Minnesota taking Penix at 12, which I'm not going to be surprised if that happens.
Yeah.
I just find it hard to believe that Minnesota's not going to bring Cousins back. And if you bring Cousins back, you're not taking a quarterback at number 12 if you're not going to play him right away. You'll take one late first round, early second round just to get that fifth-year option where even if you have to sit him 1 year,
yeah,
it's not going to cost you really anything because you still have that option to use on him.
I just think he loses. Nothing against Cousins. I mean, Cousins is, he's done well, but he is an injury prone. He's getting a little older. He's got some injuries. I mean, I just think it's risky to put, you got all this talent on that offensive unit, and then, once one guy goes down, well, pretty much your whole season goes down. It's just such a big risk to keep running with him as your only option. And if he goes down, well, then your whole season goes down.
And the thing I like about the Washington offense is when you looked at that offense against Texas, their offense runs a very similar style to what the Vikings do, where they basically line up with three wide receivers pretty much on every play. They have the tight end in Hawkinson. They have that tight end in Washington. I can't remember his name, but he's your possession tight end. Yes, they have Dylan Johnson, who is a playmaker at running back, but he's not used as often as you would like. Same with Ty Chandler in Minnesota. The offensive style, I think, just fits Michael Penix. So, I mean, I don't think he falls to Minnesota because I think someone is going to take a swing at him when you look at how he's played so far in the college football playoff and everything. And I think if he comes out and has a very big pro day that he could all of a sudden become the number 2 quarterback taken. But I'm hoping he falls to Minnesota. And if he does, I'm not going to be shocked if Minnesota takes him at 12 just because it's a situation where you need to start planning for your future and you don't know if you're going to get a guy that has the kind of arm talent that he has ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that. It's going to be interesting to see how this draft pans out, man. There's a lot of, questions with a lot of teams to be answered, and it's going to be interesting to see how that top 10 really does shape out. I'll tell you, Dustin, though, I definitely see some trades happening in this first round because of that.
I do too. And Jay, that's all the time we got. I'm sure we could do this for hours and hours and hours. But once the NFL playoffs are done and we can kind of get into full-blown off-season mode, we'll definitely do this again because that's when the draft order will be 100% set in stone. That's when we'll start seeing teams probably already make trades. And then obviously with free agency, if a team signs Russell Wilson or anybody, that could change obviously what they're going to do with their first pick. But until then, take her easy and thanks for hopping on.